Where I got it wrong was I was clumsy with my language in describing Afcon as not a major tournament.
But does he need a few more league titles over the next? If he stays at Liverpool, does he still need a bit more to be? Is he still behind them other lads for winning them bigger awards? Maybe.
Oh, you mean for the awards?
For the awards and his legacy, you know.
I think the fact he's probably with Egypt and he's probably not playing in the major tournament as such, or maybe got a great chance of winning. I think it's either the Champions League or the major tournament. Normally, the player who excels in that. You know, you're looking at sort of Vinny Jr., Mbappe right now, Real Madrid looking really good, going for the Champions League. Liverpool will be in that conversation, but right now he's certainly the front runner. And
just say Afcon is a major tournament because a lot of people are a bit saying people not taking that. Afcon is a major tournament. Just so you don't.
No, well, Egypt are not going to win the World Cup, are they?
No, but Afcon it's big, wasn't it? Remember when him and Mane was going for it in the league?
God.
I'm just saying, Afcon.
No, it's a fact. It's a fact. If you win the Euros or you win the Copa America, it's deemed to be big. So the Afcon's in the same level.
We'll come back to the point, guys. We'll come back. Today, I'm absolutely furious, guys. I've come out here to address something that happened last week. Today, I'm talking about Jamie Carragher, ex-Liverpool footballer, ex-England footballer. He's annoyed a lot of people. These comments came out last week. He has annoyed a lot of people. Most of you who are tuned into sport, you know what I'm talking about. The reason I'm not happy with this gentleman here is that his statement he gave last week, this was about, so he suggested that the African Cup of Nations, Afcon in short, is not a major tournament. And this has annoyed a lot of people, and rightfully so. So, this all happened when he was hosting. He was a pundit on Sky News, Sky Sports News, and actually, Sky Sports. You need to look at what you're recruiting for people who are going to come and represent you, because if you're bringing people like Jamie Carragher on the show and coming out with the things they are saying, I think you're going to find that your views are going to decline. But anyway, so after Newcastle versus Liverpool, that was the game, Newcastle versus Liverpool. So the conversation was about Mo Salah, the Egyptian footballer, Mo Salah. Everybody knows Mo Salah. In my opinion, he's the best footballer in the world right now. And anyway, the conversation was about him winning the Ballon d'Or competition, the best footballer in the world. And everyone is of the view that at the moment, he's the best footballer in the world and he should win that. But anyway, Mr. Carragher suggested that Mo Salah cannot win that because he's at a disadvantage playing for Egypt, which is already it's ridiculous comment to say. Anyway, his opinion. Well, everybody's entitled to an opinion, but if you're going to make an opinion, make sure it's an educated, informative opinion. Don't just open your mouth and talk like you've never been to school. So anyway, he's of the opinion that Mo Salah cannot win the Ballon d'Or because he doesn't play in major tournaments like the players in Europe do. Well, he plays for Liverpool. He plays in the Premier League, which is a big tournament anyway. It's the best league in the world. But what Jamie Carragher is suggesting here, that because the footballers in Europe play the Euros, that's the continental showpiece for the European continent, that winning that helps them win Ballon d'Or. So anyway, Mika Richards and Daniel Sturridge, who are in the studio at the moment, reminded him that Mo Salah plays the African Cup of Nations. He plays Afcon, and if he wins that, that's a major tournament. So anyway, Carragher with his I don't know if he's arrogant or ignorant or he's got both. Comes out and he suggests that Afcon is not a major tournament. Now, let me educate Mr. Carragher if he gets a chance to see this. Now, Afcon was first played in 1957. Yeah, Afcon is representative of the entire African continent, which has nearly 2 billion people. Last time I checked, there's 1.7 billion people in the African continent. And I tell you what, when that tournament is being played, there's no one in the streets. So 1.7, nearly 2 billion people are watching it. That is a major tournament. And in contrast, in comparison to the Euros, which Jamie Carragher thinks is a big tournament, there's 700 million people in the whole of Europe. Yeah, and now this is I've got facts here. So the last African Cup of Nations was watched by over 2 billion people worldwide. 2 billion people worldwide watched the last African Cup of Nations in 2023. That was hosted, that took place in the Ivory Coast, which was won by Ivory Coast. Over 2 billion. It's here on Google. It's on Google. You can search it. I'm not lying. 2 billion people worldwide watched the African Cup of Nations. In comparison to the Euros, which Jamie Carragher thinks is a major tournament, a bigger tournament than the African Cup of Nations. For starters, there's only 700 million people in Europe. And according to Google here, the last Euros were watched by an audience of 600 million people worldwide. 600 million people worldwide. Now compare that to the last Afcon that was watched by over 2 billion. Now we got 2 billion people watching Afcon in comparison to 600 million watching Euros. Now you tell me which is the bigger tournament there. And our argument is not which is bigger, but Afcon is a major tournament. Now listen, a lot of you are going to jump into here and say that everybody's entitled to an opinion, and I get it. Everyone can give an opinion, and everyone is entitled to one. We live in a fair world. However, this is not just an opinion, ladies and gentlemen. Listen, this is the rhetoric you get in the West. You know, anything. You know, a lot. I don't blame Jamie Carragher. I don't blame him at all, because this is what he's been fed from the time he started learning, watching anything. When you switch your TV on, mainstream media, they're the biggest culprits. They're the biggest culprits. So every time you switch on your TV, anything mainstream, and they're covering the continent of Africa, all you see is poverty, disease, and wars. This is what they want you to see. So people like Jamie Carragher, he's a result of what he's grown up seeing, what they want him to see. So he's going to think like that. So Jamie Carragher, I respect him. He was a fantastic footballer at Liverpool. But what tournaments did he win? You know, apart from a few league cups, maybe an FA Cup, he never won the Premier League to start with. He's got the Champions League. I'll give him that. He never won the Euros. You know, so he was not even first choice when he was when they called England, because it was John Terry, Rio Ferdinand were all ahead of him. Yeah, so I respect him for that. But anyway, so I don't want to get people like Jamie Carragher. It's representative, like Rio Ferdinand said, that it is representative of the view in the West, because this is like. It's what we call a superiority complex. You know, like from the colonial times, Africa was always painted to be a primitive place, a backward continent, and this is what the colonial, the explorers and the colonial masters wanted everybody to believe. But actually, if I dig back into history, and I'll tell you what, because I'm an educated man, and to be honest, that's another thing. This is a conversation for another time. In the West, people are not educated. You know, they're not. What they call education is primary school, and you know. But we do know that civilization started in Africa, you know. This is something they won't tell you. In as far as the 15th century, ancient Egyptians were irrigating land on the banks of the River Nile. You can see the pyramids, you know. If you look at, you know, so anyway, I don't want to get into that. I'm not political, but when people like Jamie Carragher come up and to him, he thinks he actually believes that Afcon is not a major tournament. But why does he believe that? It's because it's what he's always been told, and nothing good comes out of Africa. It's a backward continent. It's primitive, but actually, I'll give you an example. In 2010, the World Cup was held in Africa for the first time in South Africa, and if at that time you lived in the West, like I've grown up in the West, and every single time you switch the news on, the mainstream media, all they had to say about that tournament was going to be a disaster, or can they have the infrastructure to hold it, how's the turn-up going to be? This all turned out to be a lie, because up to now, the best World Cup, as I remember, is the 2010 World Cup in South Africa. The infrastructure was world class. The attendance, there was no empty stadiums. The vibrance, the colors, the supporters, it's gone on record. It's been put on record as the best World Cup being held. But people like Jamie Carragher come from that school of thought that nothing good is going to be coming from down there. So I want to educate Jamie Carragher. And you know what? This guy, Jamie Carragher, listen, I don't know how he still got a job on Sky. A few years back, Jamie Carragher was a video was circulating on social media. He went to Old Trafford to watch a game of football. It was Liverpool versus United, and United won that game. So as he came out of Old Trafford, there was a little girl. She must have been 9, 10, something like that. She gave me a bit of, she recognized that that's Jamie Carragher, gave me a bit of banter, said, "Come on, United." And this thug, this Jamie Carragher guy, he walks up to the little girl and spits in her face. He spat in her face, ladies and gentlemen. And who does that? This is the guy we're talking about. But after doing that, he kept his job, you know. And I know a lot of people have lost their jobs on Sky for doing less. You do remember the legendary Andy Gray, the Scottish, former Scottish professional, and Richard Keys. For me, I miss those two guys. They spoke football. They knew their football. They were involved in something less than what Jamie Carragher did, and they lost their job. You know, they lost their jobs. But listen, Sky, if you're watching this, anyone from Sky, this guy Jamie Carragher, you need to get him off air. I know a lot of people are going to say this was his opinion, and everyone is entitled to an opinion, but the facts are there. And for someone who's played football at the highest level, he should know. You tell me, listen, the contribution of African players to world football, to European football, is immense. I can name you names. You know, people who've played in this tournament that Jamie Carragher thinks to call a smaller tournament. Their names that you cannot put in the same sentence as Jamie Carragher. Jamie Carragher is below them. You know, I can name you a few: Didier Drogba, Sadio Mane, Samuel Eto'o, Michael Essien, George Weah. George Weah won the Ballon d'Or. George Weah won Ballon d'Or far back in the 90s. You know, and you know, how do you explain that? You know, George Weah. So these are the names I'm talking about. So this guy here, Jamie Carragher, you know, he's annoyed a lot of people. And listen, I feel like, you know, I get this, you know, this notion, this rhetoric has got to stop, because if you're ignorant, don't open your mouth. You know, don't open your mouth. But Jamie Carragher, Listen, yeah, as a footballer, he was a good footballer. But listen, you cannot. These words, calling Afcon a small tournament, for me, it feels like a direct attack onto the African people or people of the African descent. So, listen, it's like the Muslims. I'm not a Muslim, but I know if you insult the Prophet Muhammad, these guys will come for you because you're not insulting a prophet. You're insulting billions and billions of people around. So Jamie Carragher, listen, if you're ignorant about the facts, I've given you the facts. There's 2 billion people, over 1.7 billion people in Africa, and listen, when this tournament is played, you can see it actually paralyzes. Look at all the major football clubs, football teams in Europe. They all got African players. I can name you so many. I'm a Chelsea fan, and Nicholas Jackson, last time around he went, and we didn't have anybody to take up. I remember Drogba going to the African Cup of Nations, winning that, and coming back and still got the golden boot in the Premier League. But this is how important this tournament is, because when the African Cup of Nations is played, the biggest stars in football all go and play it. So who are you, Jamie Carragher? How dare you? Who are you to actually suggest that the African Cup of Nations is not a major tournament? Listen, I feel like this is why I like social media these days, because we have to educate people like this. This guy is suffering from a superiority complex, and this is the rhetoric you get when you live in the West. You constantly have to educate people, but we will educate you. And Jamie Carragher, and I said, Sky guy, this guy is destroyed you. You need to get this guy off TV, because how many scandals is he gonna get involved in? Scandal after scandal, scandal after scandal. Listen, I'm not going to even waste my time here, but someone should pull this guy aside and tell him that the African Cup of Nations, to me, the World Cup is the biggest football competition. It's up there. It's the apex of world football, the World Cup. And then next to that is the continental showpieces, the Euros, African Cup of Nations, the Asian Cup. That's up there. And then you got your club competitions. So that's the hierarchy. So if someone wins the African Cup of Nations, it's the same as someone winning the Euros or Copa America for the South Americans. So this is a major tournament. Listen, the numbers are there. The last tournament, like I quoted before, the last one. No, Google is there. Everybody can access Google. Look at the global views. 2 billion people switched on their televisions and watched the last African Cup of Nations, which was won by Ivory Coast. In comparison, the last Euros, was only watched by 600 million people. Now you tell me, which is the bigger tournament? Which is a major tournament? So please, Jamie, shut up. You don't have the facts. I don't know if it's arrogance or ignorance. I can't decide. But we need to educate people like this. This is why we are here, and we're gonna do it. I don't know how far you went with your school, but I know, knowing people like you, I doubt if you've actually even gone past primary school. But we are going to educate you. Before you open your mouth, Jamie Carragher, respect. Afcon is one of the biggest tournaments in the world. The facts are there, the views. Before you open your mouth, go and do some research. Don't just open your mouth. You're national TV and you're talking. Idiot. I'm out, guys. I'm out before I break something.